Did you know there's a right way to fold your quilt for storage? Before you store away your seasonal quilts, watch this video. The secret to long-lasting quilts in storage is folding them on the bias. And what does that mean? It just means folding them at a diagonal. It is super simple, and I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it. But before we store our quilts, there are a couple things you'll wanna do first. The first step is to wash your quilt. Ugh, I know. But trust me, you don't want your quilt stored away with dirt, hair, oil on it from people using it. My secret weapon when it comes to washing your quilt, especially if it's the first or second time you're washing it, is a color catcher. These are dye trapping sheets that catch any runoff of the fabric dye while it's in the wash. Don't skip this step or you might have a mess by the time your quilt comes out of the washing machine. I have a whole video on this topic if you're a little nervous about washing your quilt for the first time. The next thing you should consider doing before storing your quilt for the season is to label it. By the time you pull the quilt out again next year, you may forget everything about it, so now is the perfect time to label it while it's fresh in your mind. Do you ever find yourself at a loss for words when it comes for what to write on your quilt? Well, I have an entire blog post on the topic. I'll link it in the description below. It's 80+ quilt label saying ideas, so you'll get some inspiration and know exactly what to write on your label. And lastly, before we fold our quilt for storage, photograph your quilts. If you're not already, I highly recommend documenting your quilts. It's a great way to remember past projects, especially quilts you gift away and probably won't see again. There's actually an app that helps you do this. It's called the Quilts App, and I'll link it in the description below. It's completely free and is basically just a cataloging system where you can keep notes about your projects and take photos to store for the future. Okay, now to the good stuff. We are going to fold our quilts on the bias. I'm gonna go over a small square quilt, a small rectangle quilt, and a large quilt so you can see exactly how to do this method on any type of quilt.
Starting with the small square quilt, you'll take the bottom corner and fold it up to the top corner, and this will turn it into a triangle. I'm just going to rotate it here to give you a better view, but I'm going to take that paired corner and put it down to the middle of the folded edge of the quilt, and then fold either side into the middle, and then I'll give it one last fold, and this is folding the quilt on the bias. It's really that simple. The whole reason you want to do this is because if you fold it on the grains of the fabric instead of on the bias of the fabric, it can create deep set creases, which can be impossible to get out. And here's the rectangle, so you can see there's just a little bit left over when you fold the corner up, and that's totally fine. We'll do the exact same process of taking that other corner down to the middle of the folded edge, and then fold in either side of the quilt, and then give it one last fold to fold it up nice. And those deep set creases I was talking about can weaken your quilt over time. Just imagine it being folded on the exact same way over and over and over, year after year in storage. It'll really weaken those points of the quilt and can lead to holes and fraying, and that is something we definitely do not want. Here is a full-size quilt I'm folding on the bias, just to give you an example of how a larger quilt is folded on the bias. The only difference is that instead of folding only one time here, we're gonna fold a second time, just to make it a little bit smaller and more manageable to put into storage. This method is great for if you're storing your quilts out in the open or on a quilt ladder as well. And there's one more difference for these larger quilts, is you'll fold it in half here and then fold it in half one more time, again just to make it a little bit more manageable of a size for when you tuck it away into long-term storage.
Now you know the secret to folding your quilts for long-term storage, but first make sure you wash your quilt. If you're a little bit nervous, don't worry, I have a step-by-step tutorial showing you my entire stress-free process. You can watch that video here.